Hi there and welcome to episode 165 of the ADHD Adults podcast. I'm James Brown, the man whose DNA is so old it's practically dust by now, and I'm joined as usual by Dr. Alex Connor, who buys his elastic waistbanded jeans from a catalogue, so not so much DNA as CNA there. If you're under the age of 40, you will not get that joke.
Unless you live here where it's still perfectly well going. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And of course, Mrs AuDHD, you thought this was an episode about the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland?
Is it?
Did I write that?
I fucking love the Giant's Causeway.
It's not, Sam. I don't think there's a relationship between ADHD and the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland.
Can we still do one on it? I love that place.
If you want. Do you want to write it? Because we were going to do an episode that you write. Anyway, Alex, hi.
RNA of your jokes. Good puns today, James. RNA of...
Are any of yours?
Yeah, I've got a chromosome joke about coming in pairs. Probably can't. I can't do that one.
How are you both, Mrs AuDHD first?
I'm tired and really hot. How are you?
No.
No.
And the other one, Alex person. No.
Oh, I'm excellent, thank you. Week 3 of our extended break. Nothing says excellent and consistent listener metrics like an unannounced, really long break from recording. So, one of whom sent us a letter, I guess.
I just before you get to that letter, I was thinking the other day, if there's a better example of how to spectacularly try to crash and burn a successful podcast than ours, I can't imagine that there's anybody out there who repeatedly self-sabotages like we do. It's amazing.
They are. Our listeners, of which there are a lot, are tenacious motherfuckers, aren't they? Because we are. This is unlistenable to.
We do everything we can to stop them.
Anyway, one of whom what, Alex?
Yeah, one of whom has sent us a letter of the unannounced break. Didn't make any sense. And if I read, I'm just going to check who it's from, Sam. It's from a Robert from Kidderminster, everybody. It says, listen to your episode last week, and actually was last week, thank God. And it says, James doesn't in fact have social phobia. He's just an unpopular... Stop it, Robert. Stop calling James that word from heaven. No one likes it. We've had a real letter. Can I read it out?
Yes, please do.
Thank you, Sam. Are you doing a thing? You've started saying yes, please do, but the shtick we've done for many, many months.
I always say yes, please do.
Do you? And I haven't been listening.
Yes, I do. James always says no. I always say yes because I like listening to letters.
Oh, that's so disappointing. So that means I just haven't been paying attention. It's from a Charlotte from Belgium. But first, I don't know why I've put that. I've put a weird thing in the script and now I've forgotten why. Do you know why, James?
Have you?
No,
I forgot. No. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking at it.
I did a clever steak spelling. Yeah, it really is. Also, taking a drink of tea while you're supposed to read. It's all right, we'll cut that in post. Cut that. Thanks, Charlotte. It says, hi, guys. Wavy emoticon. Hi guys, after listening to your podcast non-stop for a couple of months, I finally caught up to the most recent episodes and was following them live. Having to wait a week in between obviously led to me forgetting that the podcast exists, and so I stopped listening for a good 3 weeks. Not hearing you guys talk about emotional acceptance, blah, 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 every day obviously led me to forgetting that I have the thing in sort of star emojis, and being super frustrated when I can't do the normal people things. So thanks for reminding me that I have a developmental disorder. Cheers! I'll continue not to function properly, but at least now I remember why. Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Or Charlotte.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think we're at an impasse because it just says Tarquin's fucked off.
Tarquin's fucked off, James.
Yeah. So that's it. That's it. I think that's the last we're going to hear from him. I don't know. But anyway, as usual, to be fair, I know it's Matalan, but it's very good value. And they always have parking of a podcast. It's a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme.
The parking is the most important thing, actually.
They're quite reasonable. I've never
last
been.
time around,
Of course I
last
haven't.
time around, we chatted about what we know about social phobia, and today we are thrilled to announce our first triple fister, although we'll probably forget the third part. And we're going to look at 3 factors that can contribute towards ADHD developing: genes, environment, and epigenetics, which we'll explain more about when it happens, as people are talking about it and mostly getting it wrong. Thanks to Rose B for suggesting today's topic. The 3 parts include the Sam Allardyce of evidence, Alex the psycho.
Oh no, he's not Scottish.
Education monkey, talking about the evidence around the topic. And in part 2, we will give personal reflections and tips on genetics. And then we'll answer some of your questions sent in during part 3, which we still haven't named. We probably did, but we've forgotten because it was at least a couple of weeks break between episodes 162 and 163. So, Alex, I feel like we've probably done this episode before. Tell us what the genetic side of ADHD is, if you can, as if you know anything about genetics.
I've got a first-class honours degree in genetics, James.
Have we not done this before? No.
I'm going to check quickly while Alex talks. I don't believe we have.
I think it's okay to do it again. No one listens for this bit anyway. Let's start off with the headline. ADHD is a genetic disorder in almost all cases. According to a recent meta-analysis of twin studies, which I really like saying, the heritability of ADHD is estimated at 77 to 88%, so whopper, about 74% on average, 3/4. That is similar to that of autistic spectrum disorders, which is about 80%. Remember, ADHD is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder in which the finely tuned processes that lead to a kind of typical human brain, I know they're all a bit different, but they have a typical function and structure, being fully developed by the time when I'm in 20s. With us, that happened in a slightly different way on average. This difference we call neurodivergence, and that difference causes the symptoms, traits, and behaviors that we stick together and generally display that leads to a diagnosis after about a 5-year wait, if you're lucky, of ADHD. But, and it's a big however, James, why does this process of brain development change occur? What's the cause? Or curse, or course, as James has written badly in the script. I wrote the script. The answer, James, includes our genes and our environment. I didn't write the script.
That was flawless. Now, I definitely know this because I'm a biomedical scientist, but pretend, Alex, I was never any good at genetics. If you can pretend just for a second, I'll pretend, because you taught me how to actually transfect a plasmid at the age of about 40 or 35 because I couldn't fucking do it as a scientist. So what are genes, and are they the same as our DNA?
And it's not a stupid question. There isn't actually an answer to the question, what is a gene? It depends what you mean. It's a bit of DNA that does something, but some of them don't. So it's really, but let's just pretend that we call a gene an instruction manual for one protein in your body. Our genes are bits of DNA, and the whole lot of DNA are chromosomes. So one gene is a bit of DNA, and we get 2 copies of every bit of our DNA, one from one parent, one from another. And each gene is kind of like a blueprint, got the information in that says, this is how you make a protein. I know if you've got any knowledge of genetics, you know that that's too simplistic and some genes don't make proteins, but they should. So the proteins are the building blocks. They're the things we can feel, the hair and the muscles and everything we are. They're the building blocks. And the DNA, it might help to think of genes as the blueprints that determine your physical and your mental characteristics of your body, everything you are really, like your eye colour and your height and even aspects of your personality, or your lack of it in your case, James, of course. Genes play a crucial role in controlling how your body grows as we age, how it develops, how it functions properly, interacts. And of all your genes, about 1/3 of them are only there for building and effectively running your brain box. That's a lot of genes. Tens of thousands. And it's just for one big organ. Ding. And it provides a lot of opportunities for mistakes, for genetic mutations, and so on. And that's where we can start to see the possibility for change in how our brain is built. Mutations, while we're developing mutations throughout our family life, if a gene becomes mutated, it might change that protein in a tiny way that we would normally have for typical brain development.
I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but I'll have a go anyway. Okay, Captain I4MIG Head, explain mutations for us like you actually did a PhD in genetics or whatever it was.
So you've actually Googled how to say egg-shaped in German, have you? And you've gone with an umlaut as well.
Something like that, yeah.
Amazing.
That reminds me, actually. I was listening to an audiobook today, and there was a quote from Socrates in it, and he talked about us with our brains inside our spherical heads, and it made me think about you. Socrates talked about us with our spherical heads.
Socrates.
Socrates.
Yeah, it's in Bill and Ted's, isn't it? That's what they called him. You got it wrong.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, so anyway, Alex, explain mutations for us like you actually did a PhD in genetics or something.
Okay, I got a PhD in genetics, James. It's not a PhD in dog chases ball like yours. And mine wasn't written in orange crayon. And even if it was, mine wouldn't have gone outside the lines. You've got to think of your DNA as a great big long molecule in its own right, made of 4 what are called bases, if you like, and each of those bases we've assigned a letter by scientists because of the name of the base. Is 4 bases. That's it. There in DNA, the bases are A for Alex, C for card, G for get, and T for talent. I see what you've done there. I liked it. So A, C, G, and T. Or it could be James. It could be A for adenine, C for cytosine, G for guanine, and T for thymine. So A, C, G, and T, and that all of our DNA is made of those 4 bases. Some of these, all the sequences of them, give us specific directions for making different proteins, and it's those that are the genes. A mutation, a genetic mutation, is just a typo in one of those letters. Usually, you can have multiples of them, but it starts with 1. And therefore, the instructions for how to make the thing changes very, very slightly. Take one away, swap one for another. Sometimes the entire gene can be taken out, so you don't have that protein. There's lots of different ways of mutating. It just means those numbers of those letters and the combination of them is changed because you're exposed to sun or just random growing or lots of different things. Usually, they don't make any real noticeable differences. We get them all the time, all of us all the time. Average person accumulates many, many mutations over time. Usually they get fixed by the body, but not always. Sometimes they can lead to changes in the body in serious cases like cystic fibrosis. That's mutations in one little stretch of DNA, one gene called CFTR. If you got a mutation of CFTR from your mum and then you got another one from your dad, then you would have someone that has cystic fibrosis. That's how it works, but they develop and build up over time.
So, right, if ADHD is over 70% genetic, or the heritability is over 70%, is this because of mutations then, Al?
So yes, but not mutation of our gene. There is no ADHD gene. Cheers, newspapers. Despite what you might read on their internet, there isn't an ADHD. For most people, it's loads of genetic and slightly environmental risk factors cause ADHD. What we know about the genes is that probably hundreds, at least dozens of genes with individual mutations need to come together in some way collectively to create that genetic risk for ADHD. And we don't all have the same 100. So there's a big pool of them you have to select for to make your brain work funny. They know which genes have got the most likely chance of adding to that tens or hundreds of genes. I mean, you can have, if you want the names, there's a few dopamine ones, dopamine receptor D4, D5, a transporter for dopamine gene, DAT1. There's catecholomethyltransferase, COMT, which I like because it's kind of cheese. There's a solute carrier, family 6, member 3, because they got bored with calling them Sonic the Hedgehog and things like that, so they just did it. Loads of dopamine-related things, but it isn't just dopamine, of course. There's an adrenaline one called adrenergic receptor A2A, alpha-2A, and that regulates noradrenaline. That plays a role in how we pay attention and arousal, as in, not sexual arousal.
Yeah,
Not just that, anyway.
a week
Yeah.
ding. So those are, I think, from memory or from reading, because my eyesight's getting worse, are all kind of neurotransmitter related genes, the ones you just read out. Are there any involved in anatomy or summit?
Or summit. You're a science communicator professionally, or summit. Yes, James. There are many, many others, as you well know, including slightly shorter, but still equally, I would say, as boring list klaxon, LRP 5 and 6, which pass signals from cells in the brain. So there's one called BIAP, BAIAP2. Really boring, right? Brain-specific angiogen. It's really boring. So how the neurons in your brain proliferate and grow and survive and mature, this seems to be affected. There's receptor changes, one called ADGLR3. There's loads of them. They're all involved in neural system development and function. And any one mutation in any of those does fuck all. It's not a problem. But it's lots of them together, and we start to see problems. The ADGRL3 one I just said seems to be involved, James, in the response to cocaine. So I think that joke writes itself. There are probably thousands of them to choose from. ADHD is also found at a higher frequency in a series of other genetic syndromes, like tuberous sclerosis, is that right? Fragile X syndrome, it's dodgy chromosome 1. Klinefelter syndrome, where you have more than one sex chromosome. Just because you have one or even 10 of these mutations, it doesn't mean you will get ADHD. It might not have any impact at all. It's all kind of random. But mutations can lead to disease. The more you've got, the more likely you are to get those symptoms. But they also often, blooming, don't.
Hang on, I haven't done my bit. I can't do my bit. It's all about ADHD. Fuck it. Anyway, we'll see you in part 2, where we'll talk about reflections on genetics and hereditary stuff, etc. See you in a bit. Bye.
Bye.
No.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Govy.
Welcome back to episode 165
Five.
of the ADHD Adults. I forgot. Where we are part of our triple header, James, of genes, environment, and epigenetic causes of ADHD. We're starting with genes. As always, in part 2, we're taking personal reflections on the genetic causes of ADHD somehow, and giving you our top tips on how to get that or avoid it or summit. James, go on, hit me with your personal reflections and tips on the genetic causes of ADHD or summit.
Yeah, so I think probably the best way to approach this is to think about heritability, or how it is inherited, because as Alex said, mutations which aren't fixed are often then passed down through the family line, and that's why we often see family members that have ADHD. I think the statistic is that if you have ADHD, your first degree relatives are between 5 and 7 times more likely to also have ADHD than a member of the general public. And as we always say, we can smell our own. So the second you know what ADHD is and you look around at your family members, you normally say, well, yeah, there's one and there's another. So I think in terms of its genetics, you can often certainly see that in your family. Now, that doesn't exclude environmental factors, which we'll cover in the next episode, because sometimes families have shared environmental factors. But it's clearly, when you look at twin studies, 2 identical twins who happen to be separated at birth and brought up in different environments, if one has ADHD, the other's got an 80% chance of also having ADHD. It is very clearly a genetic disorder. I think I've said this before. I, years ago, for some reason, I think it was 23andMe or something, and got my DNA sampled. You're not meant to eat before you send the swab in, but I ate a cake and didn't clean my teeth. So there's probably part cake in my DNA sample.
It came back hexaploid. That's a wheat joke. Because Chichikameistovum's hexaploid. I think we all knew that. I shouldn't have explained it.
Amazing. Yeah, and I've gone back and looked. So if you do this, and this is going to be what my tip is, if you do ever use 23andMe or Ancestry or any of these services where they sell your DNA sequence onto other companies, which obviously is a horrible thing to do, but they do it. then you can actually download all of that data and stick it through a website called Promethease. And I think it costs like $4 or something. And then that gives you a report of all of the mutations you've got that are in some way associated with a health condition or a benefit of health, like being better at long distance running, etc. Now, when I did this years and years ago, I obviously didn't look for ADHD because I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't really look for anything other than one or two things that I thought were interesting. But now I've gone back and looked at that again, and I had 49 mutations which are in some way associated with ADHD, including things like brain-derived neurotropic factor, and that's an important growth factor for the brain. One of those dopamine transporters that you mentioned, Al, I have that mutation. Dopamine transporter 5, I have that mutation, and one or two others. So it's really interesting that when you talk about those being the common mutations that are seen in people with ADHD, I've got quite a few of those. But when I look outside of that kind of genetic pattern of inheritance, because, and this is really important, as Alex said, just because you've got a mutation doesn't mean you will get a change in your presentation, because I have the gene for male pattern baldness, and my hair is the only fucking thing about me that's of value, to be fair. So that tells you.
I thought you were wearing a hat.
I have worn a hat, as you know, and it wasn't appreciated.
No.
Outside of that kind of more genetic-y thing, I can see traits in 3 generations of my family, definite traits, and I'm as certain as I can be that Robert from Kidderminster had an inattentive presentation ADHD, and I'm sure Sam would agree. It's so obvious. It's so,
out.
Yeah, it's
He
so
focuses well on writing those letters. I'm not sure that's ADHD.
Have you both finished?
Yeah, we have.
No, I don't think so.
No, of course not. Why would you? I forgot what I was going to fucking say. Obviously, no, it's so obvious now. It's so obvious now that I know what ADHD is, and I look at my dad and I can see that if I have inherited those mutations, it's likely that a lot of them probably came from him. The data on genetics is so strong. Of all the research that's out there, if you go away and read particularly the World ADHD Federation's consensus statement, I think it's 232 evidence-based facts about ADHD, just read the evidence about genetics.
It's well written, isn't it?
Yeah, watch any Russell Barkley video where he talks about ADHD, because there are obviously people out there with a platform who say it is not a genetic disorder, that it is a response to environment and to parents, etc., etc. There's no evidence for that, and there is overwhelming evidence that it's a genetic disorder that really can't be argued from an empirical angle. There's less evidence for what we'll talk about in the third of the triple fister, epigenetics, but there's just so much evidence about genetics. I suppose it's difficult to give a tip, isn't it? Ding, really. But if you do want to know, again, like I say, just find whatever the cheapest DNA analysis system is, download the data, stick it into Promethease. But it's really, really important, and they will say this on any service. If you look at the results of your DNA genotyping, you have to do it within the context of not assuming that if you have a mutation that increases the risk, for example, of Parkinson's, that you're going to get Parkinson's. If you have a mutation that increases the risk of diabetes, that doesn't mean you will get diabetes. So you have to view it within that context, that it's just a risk. And sometimes that risk is really small compared to people without that mutation. That's me done. Samantha?
Yeah, I while you were talking then, I was just getting my Promethease reports up on autism and ADHD, which obviously I've got loads of markers for. And it took me right back to that place when, I mean, you try and explain genetics to me every week and I understand it for a while and then lose it. And you explained it to me before I had my DNA test done. And then I stayed up all night long crying because I was definitely going to get leprosy and ALS and all of the things that were on my report. And then you woke up in the morning and said, "What? I've told you all this. It doesn't mean you'll get it." And I was like, what is the fucking point then? What is the fucking point of any of this? Why am I doing it? But that's just reminded me that I bought one for my dad recently because he's the only one in my family that hasn't had it done. Mum didn't see the point. And then my brother sent me a video of my dad, who's clearly got ADHD, who had packaged it all up, done it, forgot something, tore open the box with a knife, tore open the sealed container that the DNA was in because he'd forgotten to do. I don't even know what it was, but I don't think they're going to accept that. I must ask about that. But all of my family are neurodivergent in various ways, autism and ADHD. Yeah, it definitely, and like my larger family as well, not just my immediate family. Almost all of my relatives, I can't think of many that didn't display symptoms of autism and or ADHD. So yeah, and that actually is one of the big factors in, and my mum will, some days she does, but most days she won't accept that it's a real thing, because everybody's like that, because everybody she knows is like that. So it's normal to her. And that's the biggest barrier then when you go to your family and you think you've solved all their problems, because all of a sudden you've got an answer for everything, and they're not going to accept it because it's normal. It's normalized within families. Yeah, that's it, I think. Alex, go.
I will, but it's so perfect. It's such a classic experience of me and everybody really that I know. It's almost annoying that some of my family are more than I am, because that's my fucking thing, and you don't even think it's real, and look at you bouncing around on your rock climbing for 1 week and then surfing the next. Stop it. Yeah, annoying. Are we in the pocket of big Prometheus? We haven't given anything as big of a plug as we have for that fucker.
I don't think you even pay for it, or you pay
I
a
think
pound
it used
or
to.
something.
Yeah, it's a ridiculously small amount of money for what is a fantastically detailed report. They haven't. Visit Prometheus.com. Yeah, we are.
Why not try Prometheus today? Prometheus may sell your children and kill you.
Sponsored by Prometheus.
I mean, we have to check not only that we are not sponsored by Prometheus, but we might need a legal disclaimer about what we said about those other companies. We'll check. If there are beeps earlier on, you'll know why we did that. So a couple of things. One, that actually we talk about, ADHD's many mutations. All disorders are single mutant disorders are unbelievably rare in biology. You can think of a couple that get famous, but really they very, very rarely happen. It's all about percentages and so on. Right, I'm going to give an unpopular science opinion now, James. And we'll talk about this environment next time, I'm sure. I think ADHD is almost entirely genetic. I think that the exception to that is traumatic brain injuries that give an ADHD effectively a damage to a brain that then drives it to look like an ADHD neurodevelopmental brain. The children of those people wouldn't have ADHD if they weren't genetically. But the vast majority of ADHD, I think, is genetic. I think the 70% hereditary is clouded by the fact that if you have mutations in the womb when you're a baby that mean you get ADHD, but your parents didn't have, that can happen, and vice versa. You can lose it. So some of that will be natural senescence. I think that some people don't have access to diagnosis, so that number comes down. I believe that it is almost entirely genetic. I face quite a lot of flack for that on Tintinet from the Gabor Mate belief system brigade.
Yeah. Can I just quickly, before you possibly continue, actually agree with you to some extent? And that is because, again, there's a range of values when it comes to the heritability or the percentage that your genetics drive the risk of developing it, which is as high as almost 90%. I think 88% is the highest of that range, which does suggest it is almost entirely genetic. And because there's more than one root there, so you can inherit it from your parents, you can have what's known as a de novo mutation that just kind of occurs. You can have what's known as a gene by gene interaction. That's where you've got one risk gene which is trivial, but then it's amplified by a second. You can have gene environment interactions. There's epigenetics. There's lots of different ways. So actually, Alex, you might be right if the correlates, the lifestyle correlates, because they're not causes, they're correlates or associations. If they drive epigenetic change, you could argue it's entirely genetic, possibly.
Really excited about the epigenetic one because it's interesting, and I know it's not proven, but it's interesting. I think if I'm going to give a tip, it's to think about genetics as a really good thing. What Sam said is the thing you should be doing. Think about your family. Then have a look at regular people. We're not like those people. I thought we were. we used to have like mantras in our family, like, "Oh, aren't people boring?" And what we meant was, we meant stable. The things we ridiculed them for were like normal people things. Look at them washing their car. Look at them attending school. Fucking hell! Look at the mentalists, and there's loads of them. Yeah, about 97% of the population. There's a reason for this. Everybody, I think that when you look at the data on the entire population, you know, all those characteristics of ADHD, the ADHD traits, you see.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at how often they occur in the regular population, it really isn't a lot. This idea that everybody does that, they really don't. Each one is about somewhere between 1 and 10% of the population does any one of them. You know, we really don't do them very much as a society. And people with ADHD who've reached diagnosis levels, we do every single one of them 80 to 99% of the time. Every single one of those little traits and characteristics. It's a massive gulf. It's hard to get a diagnosis. So much so that there's loads of people struggling out there who don't reach diagnosis. We've done that episode on sub-threshold, and they don't do very well in life because we've drawn this line. And when you reach it, like we have, it's bloody extreme. I mean, the things we've had to go through mentally, you know, the mental health challenges we have and continue to have, and my pretend alcoholism, your sadness, and Sam's, you know, just Sam.
Yeah.
These are extreme. Most people don't face those things, and it's genetic. And the people around you, in your family, are probably facing similar things and masking, or they're very lucky. And
so true.
That's it.
Quick game, Al. Quick game, Al.
Time I checked the clock.
Quick game. So, you may not have realised it. This isn't my natural hair colour. I mean, the fact that you knew me for like 12 years when I had brown and then slightly grey hair. This means that I have to bleach and then tone it. And you know, normally Sam does this for me. He doesn't always get it right. And I had a toner incident. I had a toner incident very recently, and it was due to me basically not being attentive. So you got three options. What went wrong? Did one, I pull a jumper on while the toner was still on my hair, and therefore smearing it all the way down the back of my neck and on the jumper?
Okay.
Did I, B, put the wrong toner on as Sam was busy in rabbit ears and it didn't go well? And trois, did I forget it was on there, scratch my head and cover my fingers in burning peroxide?
Right. I don't think it's one, because you don't wear a jumper. You wear a cape at all times. We've established that, because you're a Dracula. I think that unless it was blessed peroxide, it's not going to burn your fingers, is it? It's only holy water that does that. So it must be wrong toner.
That's a good one. Yeah, no, you're wrong. I put the jumper on. Forgot it was. I'd taken the jumper off to kind of... Yeah, I'd taken the jumper off to do... There's various washings of hair stages, and then completely forgot it was on, so just put a jumper on.
Is it tie-dye now? Have you tie-dyed your jumper?
No, it's in the bin. I fucking ruined that jumper, mate.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's now an embarrassing, I think, 16-7 for this series, mini-series, part of the year, whatever it is. Yeah, and it's getting worse.
Wasn't I 7-0 up or something at one point?
Yeah, you were, mate. What a run. My God. It's just like you're buying Munich. So we will take a short break and we will be back in part 3 to answer some questions what you sent in. See you in a bit.
Bye. Welcome back to episode 165 of the ADHD Adults Podcast, where we are talking about the causes of ADHD. 1, genes. I'm going to ask a question from Graham. It knocks me every time. This is a question from Graham. Like many people, emails are a big part of my working life. But with ADHD, I'm often so forgetful to respond to an email, or forget to add it to my work task list, or I'm looking at something else online or playing solitaire. I don't want people that have emailed me to think I have forgotten about them. I have. So can you suggest anything I can put into, say, an email signature that says in a more polite way, I'm a bit shit at this responding lot, but it's my ADHD and I'm not just being an arse to you. Please bear with or give me a regular chase. And how have you And how have you had any success or experience with explaining things like this, that on an email to people that you may not know well? And have you had any positive or negative feedback as a result of it?
What brilliant question.
I know,
Really
yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
have seen this in people's email signatures, but I haven't done it
Yeah.
in mine.
So,
Why not?
so
about you
I'll go
guys?
first. I'll go first because I have. So just towards the end of my academic career, when I was kind of militantly ADHD and I didn't give a fuck about anybody I worked with, I thought, why should I not inform people that it's possible that I won't respond to an email within a time frame that they think is appropriate? And this is the thing about email. We often have an inappropriate relationship with email because people think that there's an obligation to respond to an email within a certain amount of time, and there isn't. Even if somebody sends you an email saying this is urgent, well, it might be urgent to them. It might be urgent to you, but you get to make that decision. I had both something in my signature along the lines of I may take some time to respond to this email as I have ADHD, something like that. I also had a status on Microsoft Teams that would say something like, it may take me some time to respond to your message. And that's because I felt fully safe and secure in doing that. And I think that's where it comes down to, or what it comes down to. If you have, for example, declared your ADHD, if you feel safe in doing that, then what you're doing is taking control of your relationship with email, because that kind of, if you like, fear that you'll miss an email, or that feeling of obligation that you have to respond to something. And Sam and I were talking about this just today, and Sam obviously answers most of our company emails because I just can't fucking do it anymore. I used to be ace at emails and now I can't. And we're working on just checking it first thing in the morning and last thing in the afternoon, and having it off during the day because it's a distraction. And the way in which we have this relationship with emails is inappropriate. So if you want to take control of your communication via emails and feel comfortable, I think it's a really good idea to have something in an email signature.
Did you say having it off during the day, and I'm the only one that said
Yes,
ding?
yes, yeah. It's fair play, mate. Missed that completely.
Devastated.
No, I apologise. I owe you a ding for that.
If you Google ADHD email signature, it comes up with some, like, places like Reddit have got example. Sorry, my brain is, I'm losing my words now. It's a lot, isn't it? One after another. Yeah, there's lots of examples on there. So and there's lots for autism as well. So it's really good, actually. And people are saying exactly what they struggle with and putting it in their email signature, which I think is a really good idea. So I think it's a good idea to just say that I have ADHD. So if I don't respond to you, please don't think that I'm doing this intentionally. And I don't have any problem with you chasing me. In fact, it works well for me, or whatever you want to put in there, I think.
Can I say a counterpoint to what you two have just said?
Yes.
I don't feel obligations to tell people that I'm not going to answer
Yes,
email.
you're different, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, though, because I would
No,
hate to think that somebody was waiting for a response and I haven't given the one.
So my view is that them sending me an email isn't in fact that big an obligation, and it isn't that big an ask from them. I think a lot of people go, oh, Friday night, send all my emails out, and they don't give a shit whether there's an answer or not. I use a thing called masterful inaction often. If I haven't answered and then they don't need me again, they'll just wander off. I don't find it's a very helpful professional way of doing everything we do. If it's super important and you're going to lose your job, of course. If you want to do it, of course, I prioritize like that. But for every single email I get, to feel the need to be answered is something I have never, ever agreed to. And I don't feel that obligation. Go on, James, sorry.
I think this is something that Sam is working on a lot. And, you know this, Alex, I know this. Sam very much feels that obligation, don't you? That when somebody emails you feel you really, not just that you have to reply, but you have to reply in a very timely fashion.
Yeah, and as well, if they've sent a really long email, I feel like I can't just send a quick email back. I've got to put in as much effort as them. I think I spend too much time over analysing any communication, really.
I get emails, obviously, like you two, an awful lot, and some of them are heartbreaking. And I don't have advice, but I will write and mean it. That sounds bloody awful. I'm really sorry to hear that. I don't always feel the need to give an to
Oh,
offer some advice because I don't have any, frankly.
yeah.
I will tell individuals, Graham. I will tell individuals that where it's going to happen a lot. Can you please chase me? I never get angry. I'll tell
Yeah.
people that I work with that especially during projects. But in general, for one-offs, I choose to reject the obligation. In the same way
Yeah.
that if somebody posted a letter through my door that says, tell me, answer this question, I wouldn't feel the need to answer it. But for some reason,
Oh,
with
God.
emails, we do.
Oh, no, I would with a letter.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah,
Must be
I was a
exhausting.
nightmare when all those chainmail letters came round because I have to respond to everything and send 10 chainmail letters out. But then I had the whole conflicting thing that I didn't want to do this to it. Anyway, I'm getting off at a whole different subject.
Really are.
Carry on.
I'm thinking how I can exploit that mercilessly. I'm sure there's a way. Yeah, so I appreciate what you're saying. I can see especially why everybody feels the need to, but I choose not to face that obligation. I don't declare it at all because I don't have to, which is privilege, I guess, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Can I read a letter out from Alana?
Yes.
You're Alana.
It says,
Oh.
"Hi, insert intro banter here. Pretend I said something really funny and witty." I don't think I was supposed to read that bit out, was I?
Yeah, I think you
Really
were.
liked it. Crap. On to the question, laughing emoji. I often find that I need intense periods of stress or drama and will seek out situations that have heightened emotional taxes in order to function day to day to the point where I don't really know how to cope when I'm in a period of relative calm and will then agree to things that make me uncomfortable because that's how I think I should always feel. Partly this makes me think of Alex's little concept of domestic anxiety, but on more of a long-term basis. Just wondering if this is something others feel too, if there is much oblique any research into the link between ADHD and this unnamed concept. It may have a name, I just don't know if it does, or if it's just me being a massive dramatic weirdo. Thanks, keep being great. Love you all, Alana. That's a great question. And it's one I don't really have an answer to, James. Do you?
Yeah, and I don't do that at all. The opposite.
Yeah.
So I think obviously we're all different. It's one of the things
Yeah.
we keep banging on about. The ADHD isn't the same in everybody. We all have different presentations. We all have different strengths
Yeah.
and impairments, etc. And I because some of us do seek dopamine activities, because some of us respond well to external motivation and pressure and stress, for example, that can be a driver of function. We often, it's kind of a joke, but it's true, we work hyperbolically. That means the closer we get to a deadline, the more we work, until often it's the night before when we're working all the way through the night. And as a kind of related thing, if you're seeking out heightened, emotionally taxing situations or stress or drama, it will activate the fight or flight response. It will cause adrenaline to be released. That will put you in a state of arousal, not that arousal, the other arousal. And it will likely give you more motivation, or possibly give you more motivation than when you are in that kind of relative period of calm. So that would be my take on it anyway, for what it's
So you're
worth.
saying that if someone like Alana feels reward from those taxing circumstances, then that seeking out high reward that we all do in that individual case would be seeking out the high. Whereas I don't seek out those emotionally. I don't like them. I seek out reward from other things, typically drugs and alcohol historically. But it's the same thing, is it? Is that what you? I really like that explanation. I think it's good.
Oh my God, that was a compliment. What's...
I feel so.
Jesus. Now I'm all discombobulated.
Yeah, no, when you explained that, I thought, I could absolutely see that. Even though it's not something I could do, I can actually know lots of people that I think do that, actually. And that makes so much more sense now. So, good explanation, James. Go.
My God,
165 episodes and you've said something good.
Finally said something of value. Okay, last question, which is from Tony Webb. And it's a short and sweet one. What is the relationship between ADHD and brain injury?
Great.
Alex, you want to have a go?
Yeah, most people don't have a brain injury, probably, almost certainly. Not probably, definitely. I was couching myself because of letters, but they don't. Most people, some do.
You
You
won't
can
answer
get
them anyway.
ADHD. Say again.
You won't answer them anyway. You've already said that.
No, but you will, and I feel for you when you're going, oh no, oh, you're right, he's a twat. ADHD, as we've said many, many times, is a difference and a change in how the brain functions and looks. And so a brain injury, especially to the prefrontal bits and other parts, could look like that. So whether that is an injury-induced ADHD that is non-genetic, which it can be, it can cause ADHD-like symptoms, you could argue, and plenty of researchers and doctors do, that is a subset of ADHD, traumatic-induced ADHD, as in traumatic brain injury induced. But most people, it isn't an insult. It isn't an injury like falling off a bike or lack of oxygen to the brain. We absolutely know that it's genetic, it's hereditary, it's not connected to a brain injury in most people. It could be in, and I think the last estimate was 15% of people be brain injury induced, which is quite high still, but not most people. That's what I think about it.
Can I add something? As somebody that doesn't
Yeah.
know as much about brain injury as you, because Alex actually does research into
Have a brain
water
injury.
donuts, don't you, Alex? And
What? Fuck off.
and their impact on brain injury, literally water donuts. The strength of association is important, and the level of the traumatic brain injury. So, for example, a mild and moderate traumatic brain injury only slightly increase the risk of ADHD. But we know that severe traumatic brain injury, and that unfortunately, I'm going to have to talk a little bit statisticky now, that severe traumatic brain injury has what we call an odds ratio, which is a little bit like saying, what's the odds of it happening? If the value is less than 1, it's reduced. It's less likely to happen. If it's more than 1, it's more likely to happen. But severe traumatic brain injury, within a year of it happening, has an odds ratio of nearly 5. So quite a big increase in the risk of ADHD being developed within a year, after a year of nearly 7. And we know that the spread of that, because these things called confidence intervals, what's the actual number, is as wide as between 1 and 11 to 12. So it's possible actually that the risk of getting ADHD after a severe traumatic brain injury is much increased.
But not genetic, right? Their kids won't.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And this is the thing. This is like, I think you said in the genetics. Is this the genetics episode?
Yes, this is the genetics episode.
Yes. I think you said earlier that traumatic brain injury is one of the few environmental factors that can cause ADHD without any genetics. Yeah. What's also interesting, as somebody else asked us to do an episode on this, and I think it's important because it's related. In the other direction, we are more likely to also have concussion.
Yeah.
And therefore there's this kind of bi-directional relationship between traumatic brain injury is more likely to lead to ADHD, but also having ADHD means we are more likely to get a brain injury.
It's so good,
Because
James.
we're more accidental.
Not just that, Sam. Yeah, because we take risks, but also because the effects on our executive function mean we're less likely to access the jobs and university that put us in a lower socioeconomic bracket on average, and those groups are more likely to have jobs that can lead to accidents and be in environments of accidents. There's loads of social, cultural, and biological reasons why people with ADHD have more brain injuries than average, as well as actual brain injuries causing ADHD. So it could be clouded. They try and look for that, don't they, in the papers, try and mitigate that as much as they can. But it's tricky. That's a great spot with the stats.
Interesting answer again, James. Yeah.
I know.
Fucking on
Someone's
fire
had his
today,
Weetabix, hasn't he?
All I've got to do is take 3 months off, attempt to end my life, and I'll be a better podcaster. Okay. That was episode 160 something, possibly 5, maybe 4. The script doesn't seem to know, of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we talked about the genetic elements of developing ADHD. We will follow this up with an episode on the environmental ones, and then at some point, hopefully, epigenetics, which I think Alex is excited to write, maybe. If by a miracle you enjoyed this episode, you can find out more at the website www.you'renotlisteninganymore.uk. You can also find access to our online Patreon community and send in hate mail to me for being a monster.
I've
Bye-bye.
apologised for that.
Bye.
Bye all.
Trigger warning klaxon, 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 big klaxon. Trigger warning klaxon, 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 klaxon.
I thought I'd made a mistake like the Red Hot Chili Pipers again recently because I bought tickets to see Suede, who's James's favourite band, and we're seeing them in Margate, and then all of a sudden I had a notification through about the tickets in Manchester and thought, fuck, I've booked them for Manchester and not Margate, and was absolutely panicking, and then thought, no, I've got the tickets for Margate here. They must have got it wrong, like I thought they did with the Red Hot Chili Pipers. I thought they'd made a typo. Anyway, turns out they hadn't got it wrong. I'd bought tickets for Manchester and Margate. I don't know why. On consecutive weekends, they were a lot of money, and we're only going to one of them.
Wow. And was it as cheap as the Red Hot Chili Pipers because nobody listens to Suede anymore?
No, because the
No,
Manics
it was
are there
much
as well,
more
mate.
expensive. The
Yeah.
Red Hot Chili Pipers was like 20 quid a
25
ticket
quid.
or something.
I don't. That seems a lot to me. I don't go to concerts because.
Right, I'm going to click end recording now.
Thanks.
So if you